Howdy, boys and girls, and welcome to what might be the only Carla Crappy Show of season 9. We have no idea, but there are enough college football things going on here in mid-July that we thought we should do a show, and while we still can. Hi, Carla.
Hi, Crappy. Yeah, there's nothing else to do right now, so let's talk about mythical college football.
Mythical college football. It's not just the mythical college football championship. It's also the mythical college football season.
Yes.
We'll see how that goes. I'm going to take this mask off. We thought we'd do this for the visual. I love this Big Ten thing. But yeah, I'm hang on, just a second.
Okay.
Okay. And that's much better. And that's much better. I love the Fox mask. Those of you who aren't watching, Carla has a Fox blue background with the folds. It's really nicely done. And that was mother-in-law, you said?
Yeah, my mother-in-law made them. She sent us a bunch for Easter because we've been in quarantine for that long. And,
okay.
Yeah. So
yes.
So yeah, it was our Easter gift was these Fox
Very
masks,
cool.
and I get lots of compliments when I wear it out.
Very cool. If you're listening, you did not see mine. I have a Big Ten Gator, which has sort of been my preferred mask style when I go out. But it's something I got for signing up for the Big 10K. I am not doing the 10K, by the way. I'm doing the 5K, and I'm going to do it very, very slowly here next week sometime. Yeah, I know.
That's fine.
It's going to be fun. But I have that Gator as a thing for that. There's a thing I wanted to point out as we were getting ready to do and texting a little bit about the show, and I had a chance to listen to our last show from season 8, which was our preview of the national title game between Clemson. It was a catch, by the way.
It was.
And thank you. And LSU. And I wanted to point this out, Carla, because you pointed out, as we're talking about, we've been doing this for 8 years, and you said our 8th year was nuts, and they usually are, but there's a lot going on last season.
Yes, there was.
And this is a direct quote. I'm looking for a little more stability in year 9.
Yeah, this pandemic might all be my fault.
How did that work out for you?
Well, I guess we kind of got stability in the fact that I haven't left my house in 4.5 months.
That's stable. That counts as stable. Yes. Yes.
Everything else is kind of like poof, gone. But yeah. Yeah, because I listened to that show today too, and I just started laughing when I heard myself say that.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh wait, I have to bring this up. I have to.
Yeah.
Because we have.
We had no idea. We made crazy, ridiculous predictions, and we didn't come anywhere close to this.
No, you can't.
And it's funny because one of the events for work that we had to cancel, supposed to happen in June, had the theme of 2020 vision.
Okay.
Because everybody does vision in 2020.
Sure.
Right? So we made spoof T-shirts that said 2020 vision. Yeah, but we didn't see this coming.
Right. No, I mean.
I'll wear it on the next show because mine arrived.
Okay.
So.
Okay. That's good. If there is a next show, if there's a next show to do, that will be a great thing to wear. I actually have my Ohio State thing that I got immediately after the national title game. I have an Ohio State Joe Burrow jersey.
Nice.
That I will. If we do another show, I will be happy to put that on.
We got to come up with an excuse to do another show.
I mean, that's something we can think about. And it's there. You and I texted a little bit about college football simulations, and there's got to be something we can do. But for right now, I guess there's still a possibility. There's still plenty of discussions going on that, let's talk about what might happen. There are plenty of hypotheticals out there that we can kind of chew on and see what happens. I do want to point out one thing. Guys who have listened to us for a long time, we're pretty lighthearted about this, and we joke around and we laugh a lot, and we will do that tonight. Certainly, I don't want anyone to think that we don't take COVID-19 seriously.
Yeah.
Carla, you and I haven't talked about this. I'm sure people have had it. I have friends who really suffered when they had it and are still struggling with it, even after they're technically well. So I please don't think that we're taking this lightly. I mean, I'm a huge college football fan, and I would be devastated if there was no season in 2020. But I do recognize that there are things that are way more important than my feelings for college football. So yeah. I want to offer that disclaimer before we jump into this and start talking about what happens, what might happen, what should happen, what won't happen. So having said that, we're sort of Big Ten centric, given where we grew up and where one of us lives. And the Big Ten was the first big conference to kind of set what would happen if we get as far as a season, and that is a conference only schedule. The Pac-12 has since done the same thing. There's the scheduling flexibility. There are consistent protocols that you can enforce as a conference that you might not be able to enforce if you're dealing with non-conference games. Right. And I can talk a little bit more about that. But Carla, just as a starting point, what do you think of that as a plan? Is that something football wise, fan wise? What do you think?
Well, it's interesting. Because if you think about our fandom in the Big Ten, when you go and you look at conferences, the Big Ten is probably set up the best to do a conference only schedule, in that outside of Rutgers being an outlier distance wise, like there's a centrality to where the teams are located, and if you had to nix flying, the Big Ten could still, in theory, play a conference schedule without flying. That's a luxury that the Big Ten has that the ACC doesn't have, that Conference USA definitely doesn't have, that the American doesn't have, right? So if you're looking at the SEC, could probably pull it off. You've got a couple teams that are a little bit out there, but I think the SEC could do that. Pac-12 is going to be real interesting. Because that's a lot of ground to cover for the Pac-12. So the Big Ten actually, I think, has the best shot at being able, and maybe the SEC. The challenge being is that cases are really kind of ramping up here in the South. They seem to be doing a little bit better in the Midwest. So in my opinion, I think the Big Ten should be leading the conversation here, because I think they're the ones that have the best shot of having some semblance of a whatever we might call normal season, just because of the logistics and their physical locations. I think is good. I think it would be interesting to see if they expanded the schedule a little bit within the conference. So you played a couple more, so the East teams played a couple more teams from the West.
And I think that's something that they discussed doing.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I joked about the idea of that the Big Ten North might finally become a thing. I've been joking about that for a long time, and man, wouldn't that be fun? Let's let the Michigans play Bucky and row the damn boat. I would love that. Let's make the Big Ten North a thing. So I think that's a possibility, but I also think there's some challenges outside of the Big Ten in trying to pull off just a regular conference schedule, and whether teams are going to be willing to travel, and how do you do that, and especially in conferences that are way spread out. It's going to be real interesting to see what's actually possible.
The thing that made the most sense to me is, if I look at this from a non-fan perspective, is the flexibility it gives you if. Say this is, I haven't looked at schedules or anything. I say Ohio State's going to open with Indiana at home, and there is a flare up in Columbus, and some players test positive, and you need to kind of not include them for a few weeks, so you can schedule, if you have like an 11 game schedule in that September to the end of November window, you can play that game later,
Yeah.
Say you've got an open week at the end of October. Okay, we're going to do it then. That would allow you to get through a full season, whatever, where there's 10 games or 11 games. I think that 12 would be pushing it. Although, we've got enough teams we can do that.
Right.
I do think from a fan standpoint, it would be fun. As a Big Ten fan, I look at this and I think, oh man, if one of our extra games is against Minnesota and PJ Fleck, that would be really cool. The Big Ten North, that would be a you could do like a mini tournaments. The Big Ten North, you could do the Corn Belt, you could do a bunch of Rust Belt, a bunch of stuff but I from a fan standpoint, I think anyway that would be really cool. I think the Pac-12 has a lot of the same kind of advantages. Maybe with the exception of traveling to Colorado, that's a hike that's not feasible via bus or whatever. But most of these programs can afford to charter flights anyway, so that's not a huge thing. But I kind of like the idea, just on its face. I think it's a fun thing. One thing that I would be concerned about, especially if we're doing all conference schedules, or if a couple conferences are doing all just conference schedules and others are doing the schedules that involve non-conference games, and that's the SEC is considering like an 8+2 or a 9+1, and the pluses are their non-conference games. And I understand why they're doing that, especially the +1, because they have so many big rivalry games that with ACC teams, and I understand that they want to maintain those. So my question here is, if it's an all conference schedule, or if a couple conferences are sticking with themselves and a couple more are playing non-conference or playing conference games against each other, what effect does that have on the polls? What effect does that have on the CFP rankings? If we stay where we are, the Big Ten, Pac-12 are playing conference only schedules. SEC, ACC, Big 12 are playing interconference games. Does that put them at an advantage?
Who knows, right? Like, I wish I could remember who tweeted this. It was a couple weeks ago that I saw it, and I tried to go back, and of course, in the abyss of Twitter, I couldn't find it today. But somebody tweeted, like, I can't wait for the breakdown of the records, or like the way that the seasons break down for like a 6-1 Clemson and a 4-0 Ohio State.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so you end up with this, like, because there's not consistency across the conferences. Mm-hmm. Like, you may see some conferences maybe only play 5-6 games, mm-hmm. Based on whatever happens in their areas, and you might see other teams that are doing what you're talking about might play a full 8-game schedule with a +1. Mm-hmm. And how do you even look at those teams on the same level?
Yeah.
Like, there's no good way to do this. They'd never do this because of the money. There's a lot of things I'm going to say tonight that there's a lot of things that they'll never do because of the money.
Asterisks.
Asterisks.
Because of the money.
Yeah, this entire season is going to be that way. But part of me wonders if we just say to heck with the college football playoff for 1 year, mm-hmm. and we just go back to the traditional bowl season. Because I don't know if there's a good way to be able to. How do you balance the teams out? Yeah. And I don't know how that's possible.
I didn't even write down anything about bowl games because I'm still having a hard time wrapping my brain around what a regular season might look like, much less a postseason.
Or maybe there's no postseason at all.
Yeah, that might be.
You name your conference champions, and Congratulations.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that had not occurred to me, but maybe that's the best possibility. I mean, I harp on this a lot because not as much recently, but in the sort of recentish past, the Big Ten has struggled with national perception as a conference, especially versus the SEC. The ACC suffers that now. And Carla, you and I are as guilty about that as anybody, Clemson and everybody else. But if you don't have any games between teams from different conferences, you don't have that direct measuring stick anywhere. You don't have the transitive properties of college football.
Although the conference transitive properties of college football could be really fun too.
It could be. But but you end up relying so much on what is the perception of the conference,
right?
And I do think if we're just playing strictly conference schedules, I do think that puts the SEC in an advantage. I think that the Big Ten's perception has improved recently, so it's not necessarily a drag on what happens to my team or yours. The ACC suffers, certainly. The Pac-12 suffers.
Yes. The Big 12 suffers.
Yeah. And is that necessarily fair? It's a hard thing, and maybe if we're talking about how that stuff plays into postseason, maybe there is no postseason. That would be a nightmare. I hadn't even occurred to this. I hadn't even thought of this, but that would be a nightmare. To try to assemble and make sure that the protocols are consistent.
Oh yeah.
How do you if you organize a bowl game, do you want to do one without people in the stands? Maybe you just play a regular season and crown a conference champion and be happy with that. That might be the best way to go. I watched a quick video with Brian Kelly from Notre Dame today. He said his phone is ringing off the hook as far as losing if this is a all conference only schedule. He gets help from the ACC, obviously, but he's obviously hearing from other independents as well. So he says Notre Dame's okay, but I'm curious just kind of about other independents. Army, a group of 5 teams. Ohio State had opened with Bowling Green and had Buffalo on the schedule because there are always a couple MAC teams on Ohio State's schedule. What happens with those guys? It certainly takes away an opportunity for a big in-season upset. And if we're talking about perception, you and I have talked a lot in the last couple of years about Central Florida and the perception of the conference versus what they've done and how it hurts them. If there are just conference only schedules, what happens to those guys? Are they pretty much screwed in 2020 as far as the national picture goes?
Yeah. I mean,
why? Yes.
That's a great question to answer. To ponder at this point, geographically speaking, it would make the most sense if Notre Dame signed a 1-year agreement to play in the Big Ten.
Yes, but Notre Dame's had opportunities to join the Big Ten in the past,
right?
And they've said no.
And they've said no, but
every single time.
But in this scenario, if they want to guarantee playing time and they want to guarantee opponents and play within their region and play some darn good football games, for 1 year, let's lock up with the Big Ten. You're right, it won't happen. And this is another one of those like wacky scenarios that I was playing in my head. Is the thing that will never happen, but would probably be one of the better ideas to try to save a football season, would be for 1 year to say the hell with conferences, and play regional schedules, which will never happen. Which will never in a million years happen. But if you did, but it would get more. It would. I've got all kinds of scenarios here. Like the Big Ten would almost stay intact because they're already kind of a little cluster out there. But you take Penn State and Maryland and Rutgers out of the Big Ten, and you form a Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New Jersey, and Maryland kind of little sub-conference there. And think about the teams that you would have there. Like just off the top of my head, I put down Penn State, Pitt, Maryland, Navy, West Virginia, Temple, and maybe Marshall, unless you threw Marshall in with the MAC. Like you'd get the backyard brawl.
Army's an independent. Army would win in on that too.
Right. You know, if you did one kind of like in the Mid-South, you could get Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee State, Vandy, Tennessee, Louisville, and Kentucky.
Right.
Like those are games I would watch. You might get the return of the Big Eight. You might get the return of the Southwest. So, you know, for 1 year, and what the heck, let's let the Michigans just do their own thing. Let's get all the Michigans up there with all the directional Michigans and maybe even add North Dakota State and South Dakota State into the Big Ten North. How much fun would that be?
How many directional Michigans would beat Michigan? That's what I want to know. That's
we could
my
do
question.
An entire show. There's our next show. How many directional Michigans can beat Michigan this year? I love it. But wouldn't that be fun for a year? Like if we're going to say there's not going to be a national title and there's not going to be any implications for 1 year, let's just throw away the conferences in the Power Five and the Group of Five, and let's play regionally, because Conference USA is not going to be able to play. Like they're so spread out. That's going to be hard for them to play. And we've already talked, the American is just all over the place. Let's play regionally for a year. And let's have fun with it. I mean, if why not? That would be fun. I will tell you why not. And it is,
it's money. It is the Big Ten network. It is the ACC network.
Yep.
It's the agreement the SEC has with ESPN.
It's all the money, but
that's why.
Right. That's what I said. A lot of things I'm going to say tonight are because of the money. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun.
So I don't know what the independents are going to do. What does Notre Dame? I don't know what Notre Dame does.
I think Notre Dame, and I've read stuff both from Notre Dame and from the ACC. Notre Dame's going to be fine. The ACC will add enough games. If it's conference only, they're going to need to. Those teams are going to need to make up games as well. So you will have Notre Dame picking up extra games in that conference, and maybe grabbing a couple others with independents, and maybe that gives us Notre Dame Clemson, which would in terms of a marquee game, would be right up there. That would be a fun one to watch.
If you played regionally, Clemson would actually have to play somebody.
Whoops. There is that. My bigger thing is like I look at MAC teams. OU actually does not have any Big Ten teams on the schedule this year. Although only one game, which is a game against a 1AA opponent. I don't remember who it was. That's the only game that's been canceled so far. So, my alma mater is in relatively decent shape, but
the MAC is in relatively decent shape. If they played a conference only,
if they played a conference only, yes, they could make up a lot of those games. But there's some work to be done. I think I read Northern Illinois had 3 Big Ten teams on the schedule, so they're shopping. They are looking right now. So there's some hustling there that they would have to do. If the conferences went to, if all of the 1A conferences went to a conference only schedule, the MAC would be in good shape again because of the relative compact geographic size. I think they would be all right.
MACtion every night of the week.
Man, I would love it.
Wouldn't that would be awesome?
Be spectacular.
I'm in.
Be spectacular. I wanted to bring this up in part because I don't know if you noticed the hat.
Cornell.
My nephew is a freshman this fall, and he had Ivies don't give out scholarships, but he got significant financial help to go play football at Cornell. And of course, as you were probably aware, even before the Big Ten announced its intentions, the Ivy, I think, was the first 1AA conference to say, we ain't playing sports. this fall. It ain't gonna work. My nephew is he's disappointed, but he's also happy he gets he gets extra time to acclimate himself to an Ivy League school, and with the possibility, and this has been mentioned more with FCS schools than with 1A schools, but there's discussion about a spring football season. I think it works for the Ivy League. That's again nice compact league. They don't have to play anybody else. They're going to be thrilled with an Ivy League championship. I know there are other FCS conferences that are considering the same thing more broadly. And this came up as when the SEC athletic directors were meeting earlier about a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
Spring football season. What do you think?
I mean, it would certainly be different, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that would change about it, including practice climates,
mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that the weather would play a factor here.
Yeah. Yes.
But there's a lot to like about it. I've seen a lot of conversation of, and it's kind of late to try to do it now, but like switching basketball and football season. And playing basketball in the fall, and it's too late now to do that, right? Yeah. But that's an interesting conversation. Mm-hmm. Worth having. And it's also interesting that now, the Ivy League has talked about it. I know this is at a different level altogether, but I believe it was today, I just saw it today, that California decided that it's going to play its high school football season in the spring.
Ooh,
and
wow.
that's a big deal.
Yes, it is.
Because that has huge recruiting implications, mm-hmm. right? Because a lot of your top tier talent comes out of the states of Texas and California and sure. Florida. And California has said, we're not playing this fall. We're moving everything to the spring. I think we're going to be in a better shape virus-wise in the mm-hmm. spring. I think you might have something a little closer to a almost normal football season mm-hmm. in the spring. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to like about that concept, other than the fact that you'd have overlap with basketball, which doesn't mm-hmm. affect students. It does affect personnel at universities. It affects fan bases. It affects some other stuff, and television schedules. If we're going to talk about money, we got to talk about money, right? So, basketball overlapping with football is going to be a problem when it comes to the ACC network. Mm-hmm. So there's some challenges there, but there's a lot to like about possibly pushing this thing out and starting a football season in March.
Okay.
Right? Like, if you're already putting the team through spring drills anyway, yeah. Why not? You'd want the season to wrap up by June, because once you get to June in the South, you can't play down here because it's too dang hot. But but it would.
That is a very real point. Yes.
To me, I'd rather see the football season postponed than canceled.
Okay.
And my gut tells me now we are inching closer and closer to a full cancellation. Mm-hmm. If I had to choose between the two, I'd rather see them kick off in March.
Okay. The thing, and I guess this discussion came up in the meetings with the SEC athletic directors. The concern would be, if you play a season, some form of a season in the spring, what happens in the fall? Is it wise to play 2 college football seasons in 1 year, 1 calendar year? And that is that's a very real question. Yeah. From my fan perspective, I'm like, oh God, just any college football would be awesome. And in the spring, there wouldn't be any bowl games. You'd pretty much have to, there wouldn't be any postseason.
Right.
It would pretty much have to be just conference only. But like this, I am really excited about the prospect of these kind of compact seasons that are going on in other sports right now, or at the pro level. The MLS has this tournament going on right now, and it means that there's soccer on TV every day, and I'm really enjoying that. A 66 game baseball season, I think is going to be a lot of fun. That the NHL and the NBA are basically jumping into playoffs when they restart. It's different and it's interesting, and I'm really enjoying that, but the concepts, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think that would carry over to college football. But I don't have an answer for that question. You know, do you put kids through a full-ish season, in March, April, May, and then ask them to do the same thing in September, October, November?
Yeah.
You see college football players struggle when in their first season in the NFL, because they're still playing in January,
Right.
in regular season games in January. You're like, oh God, this is a lot. Because at that point they've played, in a typical season, they played four preseason games. They've played, 16 of 17 weeks following that. That's a long time. And that would be 2 seasons in 1 calendar year would be rough. I think there's no question. So if we're talking about what's best with the players, I'm not sure that's the right way to go. As a fan, I'm really intrigued. To be honest, it would be. I think it's workable. It would be a lot of fun. I'm not sure it's the best thing for especially for the players.
Yeah. I mean, you have the opportunity to kind of push the fall season back a little bit if you needed to, because there's that massive break between the end of the season and the bowl season. So you could, in theory, maybe push back 3 weeks, but is that enough? You raise a good point. Like that's hard.
Actually, and it's not that much of a massive break. It's 2 weeks at this point. The Big Ten title, the title games are all the first weekend in December, and bowl games start mid-December. And and most the big teams aren't playing until the end of December, sure, but not that much of a break these days. This is a out of left field question that I discovered I was doing research right now, and we're going to answer. We're going to talk about this one, and then I think we're going to get to our 2 kind of final things that are the most important questions we have to ask about this subject. If you look at what's going on now in college football, there is a possibility that a couple conferences may be playing all conference schedules. A couple conferences may be playing each other in some form or another. There may be smaller conferences that are just kind of have throw their whole schedule out the window and trying to jerry rig something at the last minute. An authority no less than Paul Feinbaum said a couple days ago that Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA, should be fired because the NCAA has not done enough to provide leadership as everyone sorts this out. I think on the same show, he interviewed Mack Brown. Mack Brown suggested that there be a college football commissioner. Both of those things speak to upper level leadership and what they see as the lack of it at this point, and the fact that we might end up with some bizarre hodgepodge of who knows what it's going to look like. Do those guys have a point?
Yeah, they do. I mean, if you think about what we're just talking about now, I mean, we're starting to see some of the old 1AAs canceling their seasons,
yes,
right? Because they've just already said, you know what, we can't do this. We can't keep up with the protocols. We're not going to put our players at risk. We're not going to do it. It's not going to stun me if we start seeing lower level group of fives start doing that. It would not, what's the Sun Belt going to do? Right. Yeah. Like those smaller conferences like that, I mean, and the fact that there's no standardization in telling conferences, no, you're only going to play conference schedules. Sorry. Yeah. Like that's the best thing. Like it's challenging, and they've left these decisions up to the conference commissioners. who are not just dealing with football, they're dealing with everything else, right? So they've got all these other sports. And yes, I get it. That's why they're hired at the universities to do those jobs. But any sort of guidance from the NCAA would help.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I have seen, that hasn't really existed.
It's not happening.
I think one kind of this is the way the season's going to work, period, would go a long way now.
Yeah.
And we just haven't seen that yet. And so you're right. I think we're going to end up with this like wacky hodgepodge. Like what happens if the Sun Belt cancels its season, but it's got, an Arkansas State that still wants to play and can put together, maybe 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be allowed to?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what I'm thinking when I was talking about the Mid-American Conference. So many of those teams have games against, Big Ten, SEC teams. They're going to have Northern Illinois has 3 Big Ten opponents. Can you make that up in conference? Maybe. But then are you also stuck if that doesn't work? Are you stuck trying to find 1AA schools nearby that haven't canceled their seasons already? You just end up with this incredible mess. There's no way, especially if you're thinking about trying to find a logical national champion, there's going to be no way to logically rank these teams because there's everyone's
without some sort of guidance, you're not going to be able to rank the teams.
Yeah. No,
you're not.
No. I really listening to Feinbaum and make the point about in this conversation with Matt Brown. I don't know if a commissioner is the right thing, but the NCAA needs to be the group as it stands now, as what we have here in place now. The NCAA needs to be the organization that says, okay, if we get to the point where we think, yeah, we can do this, it's going to be, you're just playing conference teams in your conference. There are enough independents. You can make yourself a decent schedule among you guys. And yeah, Notre Dame's going to win that. That kind of sucks, but the notion of college football independence kind of sucks as well.
Right.
But there's someone needs to say that. Someone needs to say that. And if not, and we get college football this fall, it's going to be a mess.
Well, we're already seeing some of that mess if the report that I saw is correct, that Hawaii lost a conference opponent or lost a non-conference opponent. So guess who they scheduled? If I read the report correctly, Robert Morris.
Oh, well, Robert Morris is Division II?
Division, they're FCS.
Oh, the FCS? Okay.
Yeah, because they just moved up to the Horizon League.
Right.
So they're FCS. So if I read the report correctly, and that was a couple weeks ago, my Bobby Bell Colonials are flying to Hawaii.
That's a long flight.
To go play the Rainbow Warriors. And I'm just, as much as I want to be excited for them, because that's a huge deal, right? For that kind of program, what the heck? Go to Hawaii. That's awesome. But I think about the time that we are living in right now, and I was like, oh my God, no, don't go to Hawaii. Robert Morris can't charter a plane.
I've done that twice. Those are really long flights.
Right? I know Robert Morris doesn't have the budget to charter a plane.
Uh-huh.
Are you going to put your whole team on a plane to go to Hawaii right now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh man. I pose one additional question to you, and I want to touch on this very, very quickly. And before we get to the last couple things, because we're bumping up against an hour. Yeah, like that's unusual.
Yeah. Right.
As far as fans go, Texas announced if there's a season, they will have 50% of the stands filled. The number that I've heard in terms of Ohio State, and this is just very conversational, was 25%. Should there be fans? in the building? And this is totally a loaded question, because I will tell you exactly how I feel about this one. Should students get those tickets first?
So the answer to the first question is ask me in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because we just had our first major sporting event that had some fans in the stands, and that was a NASCAR race as well as
Right.
an IndyCar race over in Iowa.
Right.
The NASCAR race looked a little bit more full than I was comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
The IndyCar race looked very reasonable, very
Mm-hmm.
spaced out. Lots of, many fewer people in the stands. Now I'm kind of like, let's wait for 2 weeks and see what happens.
Yeah. That's good.
Let's so to me, like, ask me in 2 weeks if NASCAR and the IndyCar was able to pull that off with fans in the stands spaced out in those environments, then okay for college football. Should college students get those tickets first? Here's the fun thing about that. We don't know how many college students are actually going to be on campus this fall.
True.
Because I'm at Middle Tennessee State. We are doing a hybrid semester. I am completely online this semester. I will not set foot on campus other than to pick up my my equipment.
Get yourself some nice pajamas and just be comfy.
Welcome to my school office. I'm sitting in it right now.
Nice.
Right. So this is where I'm teaching from this semester, is sitting right here.
Okay.
Now most of my classes are asynchronous, and so but there's a lot of students that I think are not going to move back to campus if they are taking entirely online schedules. Do I think students should get them first? I think students should have access to probably about half of them, whatever the allotment is. I think that would be fair.
Does this go back to the money thing?
It does go back to the money thing. Yep.
Yes.
Because you got to be fair to your donors and to all the people who are helping to fund your program. So I get that, but I do think it should be divided as closely to 50-50 as possible. I think that's the most fair thing to do. Let fans and let students and fans have access to maybe 60% of the seats.
Okay.
And then the other 40% go to the people that you have to be there. And here's the other thing that's about that. If you have a college football stadium that has like club seating, it's actually easier to keep people separate in clubs.
Yes.
So that's another interesting thing.
I think those are I mean, you give the club owners, the club suite owners, a max number that they can have in their suite. But those are, I think, kind of removed from the equation. Because they are already socially distanced. You say you can have 6 people per game in your suite with you, and we're good. I think I'm going to be a hardliner on the students thing, and I recognize that some campuses may not have many students on campus at all. Cornell, again, they did a study. Did a study and found that they would be better able to control their student population and the exposure they have to each other if they had in-person classes, for the most part. So that's what they're doing. My nephew is going from Florida in August up to Ithaca, and he will be in classes for his freshman semester in the fall. I think students get first crack. I understand the thing about donors. I am technically an Ohio State booster in the eyes of the NCAA, because the season tickets and we had them for this season. I think the students, if you're talking about trying to have the seniors have a season that is what it should be for someone who's been with the program for 4 or 5 years. I think the students deserve that too, as fans. You set a number in your stadium. It's whether it's 50% or 25% or 1/3 or whatever it is. You give students first crack, and then whatever tickets you have left outside of club suites and that sort of stuff, whatever seats you have left, then you go down the money list, right?
Yeah.
And the highest donor gets this stuff on the 50-yard line, and blah, 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 on down. We have two last questions, and this is basically at the root of everything. Should there be college football this fall, and will there be college football this fall? And I will let you go first.
Should there be? No, I don't think so. I think there's still too many variables right now. We're not that far off. We're recording this on July 20th.
Yeah.
Like we're not that far off from the season really starting.
We're less than a month away from what would be summer camp starting. I mean,
right.
We're about like 3 weeks.
Yeah. So, and I just think there's still too many cases climbing, and I think you're rolling too much of the dice with the health of students and athletes and staff members. That it's just, to me, the risk is too great. So if I was in charge, no, I would not do a football season. Will there be a football season? I think they'll try. I think there will be an attempt at a football season. I don't know whether they will get all the way through a full season. Okay. I think that's a real possibility. I think we're going to start playing, and then we might see there's been a lot of talk working in academia about the way they've changed the academic schedule right now, in that they're taking away fall breaks, and we're essentially doing a full semester that ends at Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And then nobody's coming back after Thanksgiving, and everybody's final is remote. So you take your finals from home. And the conversation has been, let's see if we make it to Thanksgiving. And that's just kind of and that's just kind of the overwhelming perception is, let's see if we make it that long.
Okay.
I think that's what's going to happen with the football season. I think they'll try to start a season. And we might get a couple of 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks in. I would love to see it succeed. If they decide to go, I would love to see a season succeed, but I'm not holding my breath. I think they'll start, and I think at some point they'll have to say, you know what, we've got to stop here.
Okay.
Which hurts.
Yeah.
One of the crazy ideas that I came up with, the other one that I haven't mentioned, because I've mentioned all my other crazy ideas. I have one more crazy idea, and that is,
yes, please.
Let's not play a regular football season this fall. Let's turn the whole thing into a 7-on-7 tournament.
Huh.
Because if you play a 7-on-7, there's fewer people, right? You could actually field a couple of different teams from each university. You could fill a schedule pretty easily that way. You can even play inter-squad, right? Just like a spring game kind of thing. 7-on-7s are wildly entertaining. Less contact. I mean, maybe that's the solution to the spring thing.
I would suggest arena football, but that's inside, so let's not do that. But that sort of thing would be fun.
But 7-on-7, like if they said you can't play a full football season, but you can reduce the number of people, and it would be just like soccer, right? Same number of people. Like, what the hell? Why not?
Yes.
Let's play 7-on-7 for a fall.
That is not a terrible idea, Carla. It's it would be.
I'd watch it. It'd be fun.
Oh, hell yes, I would watch it.
It'd be fun. But that was my last crazy idea, was just say, let's play it safe. Let's just play 7-on-7. Let the kids go have fun. They still get to work on their skills. And then, we pick this back up next fall and everyth's fine and dandy.
I would absolutely watch that. I would, but, and I think I've said this on the show before, if someone said to me, you had to give up all varieties of sports except for one, for me it would be college football. That would be number one, and it's not even close. I would give up everything else without hesitation. And I'm saying this as a preface to the answers of my two questions. Should there be? Will there be? I think no and no. The right thing to do is to not play this fall. I don't know if that means, should there be some form of football in the spring? If it's workable, I'm okay with that. If there's a short season, kind of spring practice goes on for a surprisingly long time. If you're not really paying attention to college football, you would be surprised how long that period is. If you extend that by a month, you've got a good preseason and you've got a fun short season to work in there. It would have to be conference only. But you could do that. And I think you could still do that without being too taxing, to have a full season in the fall if we're able to do that. But as I look around, Columbus is a hot spot right now. I know Nashville's a hot spot right now. And it's there are political things involved with this that shouldn't be a part of it, but they are, in terms of what we're doing about the coronavirus in general. There are the pro sports that are restarting now. You're able, the money involved means you're able to sequester those athletes.
Right.
Plus, if you're talking about, like the NBA versus a college football team, the NBA's staff is maybe a quarter of a third of the size of a college football team. If you're talking about the number of people, and there's a lot more money involved. You can keep those people safe. You can do really thorough testing. You can have consistent protocols across the board. I mean, you can keep it. Everyone's talking about the MLS bubble, the NBA bubble. You can't keep college football. You can't keep college kids, period, in a bubble.
Right.
They're
students.
They're students. They're 18, 19, 20 years old.
And I know taking classes.
And I know, yes. And I know some professional athletes aren't much older, but they're getting paid.
Right.
So that's a whole different situation. You can't do enough to keep college students safe. And if you say, well, they're young, they'll recover quickly, probably, but I mean, I have a friend of mine who listens to this show who runs ultramarathons, and she had it, and she's over it. And she posted a thing on social media last weekend that the air quality in Pittsburgh was still bad enough that it made her lungs burn, because she's still trying to recover from it. This hurts healthy people. And if we're talking about our favorite college football players who are healthy people, it could hurt them too. So should there be? No. Will there be? I think if you'd asked me at the end of May, I would have thought, yeah, and wouldn't have stopped to consider it for very long. But the trajectory now is scary enough that I don't think there's any way we can do this. So no and no. Should there? Will there? No, and I'm so disappointed to say it, but no, I don't think so. Boys and girls, you can find the Carla Crappy Show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and a variety of other podcasting services. You can also watch us babble on YouTube and our Facebook page. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you don't, please mind your own damn business. And as pretty much never ever before, check back sometime in August to see what the hell has happened and what it might mean for the Carla Crappy Show. And just in case, hey, thanks for tuning into season 9. It's been a blast.
World's shortest season.
This might be it. Carla, do you have any last thoughts?
I don't know. This is a depressing show.
It is, but I mean, we have to be real about what might happen.
Yeah. No, I get it. Like, I mean, that's kind of where we are right now. But
yeah. It's not fun.
No, it's not. Maybe once we get to hear a little bit more and we get a few more weeks in and decisions are finally being made, maybe we can figure out a reason to talk to each other again and do something a little bit more lighthearted. But right now, you're right. I mean, that's kind of where we are right now. So
it is bleak right now, for sure. I think you and I will work hard to come up with some kind of reason to do a Carla Crappy Show this fall, because I would miss it a lot if we don't.
Yeah.
Whether
Same.
It involves some kind of simulations, or we talk about golf, or I don't know what's going to be.
Baseball.
These mini seasons, as I said, these mini seasons that are about to start are really intriguing. So that's a possibility. We could talk about the NFL. I think the NFL is going to play
something.
We'll figure something out, right?
Yeah,
right?
We have to. We'll figure something out. We'll have fun. We can do mascot bowls or something. I don't know.
Oh, I like that.
Best all time bowl game names. The Ultimate Bowlapalooza Show.
That would be good.
See, we can come up with some fun stuff. We have to be a little bleak right now, but we can come up with some. We can add some levity to what might be a really depressing
stuff.
Like you mentioned, we might have lots of time on Saturdays to do these shows. So.
What the hell else are we going to talk about? I don't know. Guys, I again, yes, it is a serious thing right now, and there are serious issues to work out. And whatever happens, obviously we're still going to be college football fans, and hopefully we're going to be able to do something to carry us through this fall, whether or not there are actual college football games. If there are games, or if there aren't, I hope that you are able to join us anyway for whatever it is that season 9 of the college of Carla Crappy Show is going to be. And thank you for listening to this one, at least, if that's the only one. We really appreciate it. And Carla, cheers.
Cheers. Question mark?
No, the cheers is definite. The cheers is that, yeah, the cheers is good. The cheers is good. Everything else that follows, question mark. Guys, thank you very much for watching the Carla Crappy Show. We'll be back sometime this fall with something. I promise you. Carla, we'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers.